The instant Janice Comolmes eased into the courtroom aisle, the air flattened like a vinyl record hitting pause, every breath held, every eye magnet-locked on the silver-haired matriarch who'd once been rap royalty's quiet anchor. She moved with the unhurried certainty of someone who'd already measured the cost of truth and decided to pay in full, chin high, spine unbending, heels clicking out a verdict of their own. Across the well, her son, Sean Diddy Comolmes, kingmaker, billionaire, brand unto himself, blinked as if the lights had suddenly gone white hot. The colour drained from his usually camera-ready grin, paperwork wilting in motionless fingers. Even the judge's practised poker face betrayed a flicker of surprise. No one had expected the mother of hip-hop's consummate dealmaker to risk everything on public record. Defence lawyers scrambled to shield privileged conversations. Reporters stopped typing mid-keystroke, as though afraid the clatter might shatter whatever fragile facade still stood between rumour and revelation. When Janice lifted her hand to be sworn, the acoustics turned cathedral silent, and an unspoken question ricocheted off mahogany walls. If the woman who raised him no longer believed the legend, why should 12 jurors, or the rest of the world, cling to it? In that heartbeat, the narrative shifted from corporate spin to maternal reckoning, and an empire founded on swagger began to list. The prosecutor, voice pitched soft enough to pass for sympathy, yet sharp as a needle, thanked Janice for coming, but the words were barely out before Diddy's lead lawyer sprang up, tie askew, crying, "Privilege," like it was a fire alarm. He rattled off case law, mother-son sanctity, constitutional rights, anything to erect a last-minute barricade between the jury and the one witness who could detonate decades of image management. The gallery drank it in, eyes ping-ponging between counsel tables as if at Wimbledon for the doomed. Janice sat motionless, hands folded, face composed, letting the legal crossfire sail overhead. Only the steady rise of her shoulders betrayed the breath she'd been holding since stepping beneath the fluorescent glow. The judge, eyebrows arched in mild annoyance, called both sides to the bench, their whispers a frantic hiss the microphones couldn't snare. 60 seconds felt like 60 miles. Finally, the gavel tapped. Objection overruled. No privilege shields adult sons from consequence, and prejudicial, the judge noted dryly, is the nature of most incriminating truth. A collective exhale shivered through the room. Reporters resumed typing in bursts. Jurors leaned forward as though gravity itself had shifted. Diddy's lawyers slumped, his shoulders tightened like cables about to snap. Janice adjusted her glasses, eyes clear, voice ready. Permission to speak had been granted, and the court, indeed the world, was about to learn what a mother sounds like when denial dries up. Janice began softly, her memories rolling out like a home movie reel nobody else had ever screened. A Brooklyn walk-up that leaked winter winds, double shifts at the deli by day, and the MTA graveyard shift by night. Also Sean could wear spotless sneakers on class picture day. She painted him as the magnetic kid who could sell candy on Monday, parlay it into a boombox by Friday, and still charm the school principal into forgiving him for dancing in the hallway. Pride warmed every syllable, until the timeline fast-forwarded. One internship at Uptown Records turned into platinum plaques, private jets, and billionaire status faster than she could sew a button. Success is supposed to fit like a tailored suit, she confessed, but on Sean, it grew into armour. The first warning flare, the moment bodyguards began frisking her for phones in her own son's foyer. Security protocol, they'd insisted. Then came the off-limits rooms, the staff who avoided eye contact, the parties where guests left looking more dazed than dazzled. Janice tried to rationalise it, industry pressure, everyone wanting a piece of him, but each just so excuse frayed thinner than the last. By the time she reached 2010 in her story, the pride in her voice had developed a haunting echo, as though every triumph she recounted stood side by side with something darker she could no longer ignore. The early 2000s boom years should have been champagne and confetti, but Janice's anecdotes landed more like warning sirens muffled under bass lines. She recalled a 2003 album launch party in Diddy's Manhattan penthouse, where the guest list read like Grammy night. Yet she found herself lingering in the kitchen, comforting a caterer whose hands shook after Sean exploded because the bubbly wasn't the right shade of gold. From then on, every visit felt choreographed. Assistants greeted her with pasted smiles. House managers trailed her like museum docents steering tourists away from fragile artifacts, and security swept rooms she'd already been in, as if her maternal presence might smuggle contraband truth past the velvet rope. Janice told the jury about arriving at the Miami mansion in 2008 to surprise her son, only to see staff methodically collecting cell phones from bedrooms, while bleary-eyed women slipped out side doors clutching stilettos like souvenirs. Artists keep late hours, she'd whispered to herself, but the rationalization crumbled when she noticed bruises that disappeared beneath designer sleeves and laughter that stopped the moment Sean entered. Each incident alone felt explainable. Strung together, they mapped a pattern of control so meticulous it left no oxygen for dissent. By the time the platinum plaques reached double digits, Janice confessed, the Empire's polish looked less like gloss and more like armour built to conceal a spreading rot. By the time headlines first whispered that Diddy's party vibe masked something uglier, Janice was speed dialing her son from a Queen's grocery line, tabloids trembling in one hand, loyalty in the other. He laughed off the 2017 lawsuit, "Mom, they smell money," and she hung up wanting to believe him, repeating his rebuttals like rosary beads. But a surprise drop-in at his Los Angeles compound in 2019 cracked the narrative wider. That fabled pool house, rebranded a studio, was guarded tighter than Fort Knox, and Janice, wrist still stamped from security clearance, wasn't allowed past the threshold. A faint scent of stale smoke drifted through the door each time a runner hurried out, eyes downcast, clutching a Ziploc stuffed with unmarked phones. When the Cassie complaint detonated in late 2023, Janice's denial finally buckled. She FaceTimed Sean, no publicists, no legal eagles, demanding yes or no answers. His charm flickered, then failed. Tension throbbed between them like bad reception. "It's all consensual, Ma. Industry people understand." The words sounded rehearsed, a marketing deck no mother had asked to preview. That night, Janice opened a spiral notebook and began chronicling every uneasy memory she'd ever sanded smooth. Bruised wrists glimpsed under couture sleeves, contract drafts labelled "silence," staff who vanished after whispering concerns. Each entry felt like carving truth into stone, and with each page, the legend of her unstoppable son shrank to fit the margins of a mother's growing grief. The tipping point slammed into Janice like a rogue wave one icy February night in 2024 when TMZ leaked surveillance footage of Diddy pinning Cassie against a hotel hall wall with the ease of a man closing a deal. Janice watched the 40-second clip on loop, each replay chipping another layer off the legend she'd lacquered with pride. She rang Sean before the pixels finished buffering. No lawyers, no entourage, just mother and son. He sounded drained, as if the video had peeled his confidence raw, yet he still clung to the old playbook. Context, stress, people change their minds. Janice interrupted, voice trembling but resolute. Context doesn't bruise Sean. Silence pressed through the line until he exhaled a confession she would replay in her head like a haunting chorus. "You don't build what I've built by playing everyone else's rules. Sometimes people get hurt. That's business." The words detonated any residual doubt. Maternal instinct flipped to moral imperative. That night, she reopened her notebook and began logging with forensic precision. Dates, locations, names, offhand boasts he thought evaporated in studio smoke. Every entry felt like stepping deeper into a cave where echoes of her son's ambition warped into something feral. By spring, the spiral's pages bulged with receipts, and Janice understood the story of Sean Comolmes was no longer hers to protect but the world's to finally examine. When Janice finally delivered that quote to the jury, "Mom, you don't build what I've built by playing everyone else's rules," the words hit the gallery like a cold slap, erasing any last traces of celebrity mystique. Pens hovered mid-sentence, jurors stiffened as though an invisible wind had sliced through the wood-panelled stillness, and even veteran reporters glanced up in unguarded shock. Janice didn't revel in the drama. She stated it the way a meteorologist reports barometric pressure, a simple fact explaining the storm. She met each juror's gaze in turn, letting silence underscore how casually her son had framed human collateral as just another cost centre. At the defense table, Diddy's lawyers stayed poker-faced, but the mogul's jaw flexed, nostrils flaring with the realization that his private confession now lived in public record. The prosecution thanked Janice, but their triumph was muted by the gravity of what she'd laid bare. This was no lurid rumour, no disgruntled ex-employee's tell-all. It was a mother's first-hand receipt of power turned predatory. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Every listener felt the chill of complicity drifting beyond courtroom walls, seeping into boardrooms, studios, and dance floors where the soundtrack of a generation had once drowned out quieter cries. The prosecution wasted no momentum, calling in Dr. Margaret Chen, a family psychology heavyweight whose calm poise could have settled a hummingbird, and the atmosphere tightened like a drum. She distilled Janice's notebook of red flag moments into clinical terms the jury could tattoo on memory: power insulation, gradual moral slippage, coercive normalization. Each phrase felt like a scalpel, slicing glamour off the Comolmes empire in clean strokes. The defense objected on cadence alone. Knowing every syllable she uttered hardened the jury's sympathy for Janice into granite, but the judge waved them down, and Dr. Chen kept lecturing as if giving a masterclass in how unchecked celebrity mutates into entitlement. She mapped Sean's trajectory from hustling prodigy to fortress-dwelling mogul onto a graph of diminishing empathy, explaining how entourages become echo chambers and NDAs the wallpaper of abuse. Jurors scribbled furiously. A few nodded at points that matched Janice's diary entries, flashing on screens like silent film captions. On the back bench, Diddy's lead attorney whispered into a junior associate's ear, already drafting tomorrow's expert witness overreach motion. But the damage was visible. Their client, once untouchable, now looked like Exhibit A in a textbook on corrupted power. Reporters in the gallery could practically hear tomorrow's headlines writing themselves, each keystroke powered by Dr. Chen's unemotional autopsy of an ego-run feral. Night fell on the courthouse like a curtain drop, but the story kept sprinting. Cable crawls blared, Mother's bombshell shakes Comolmes' defense, podcasts cut in with midnight specials, and social feeds pulsed with side-by-side clips of Janice's steady gaze and Diddy's ashen face. Inside the hotel where the defense team bivouacked, laptops glowed past 3 a.m. as junior associates sifted Janice's spiral notebook for any strand to tug, mistaken dates, fuzzy memories, while senior counsel rehearsed an overwrought mother narrative they knew jurors would smell like stale perfume. Across town, prosecutors toasted seltzers over pizza boxes, reshuffling witness order to capitalise on the momentum and scheduling extra security after tip lines exploded with fresh accusers offering receipts of their own. Even jurors, sequestered but not insulated from their own thoughts, reported sleepless tossing. One later admitted the hotel AC never felt warm again after hearing that rule-breaking quote. Music blogs that once fawned over Comolmes' champagne showers now posted think pieces about predatory power structures. Radio stations quietly pulled bad boy classics from rotation, unsure whether nostalgia would sound like complicity by dawn. By the time sunrise painted the courthouse steps, the defence's confident swagger had evaporated into caffeine fumes, and the public, once content to spectate, seemed to have chosen a side, not Team Diddy, not even Team Prosecution, but Team Accountability, led unexpectedly by a mother who'd traded silence for a spotlight no crisis PR firm could dim. Courtroom tension recoiled like a slingshot the moment the prosecutor began cross-exam, her tone silk over steel. She walked Diddy through each charge, racketeering, sex trafficking, coercion, inviting him to map his own admissions onto statutory language. He tried to steady his voice, but every "yes ma'am" sounded smaller than the last, until one juror unconsciously hugged her arms as though bracing for impact. Asked if NDAs and hush payments were deployed to keep victims quiet, he answered, "That was the purpose." 4 words that landed like a gavel before the gavel. The gallery's collective inhale seemed to suck oxygen from the fluorescent lights. When pressed on whether blurred consent equals no consent, he paused, eyes searching for an exit that didn't exist, then whispered, "I see that now." Defense counsel flinched as though slapped. Their client was dissolving the parachute mid-freefall. By the time the prosecutor finished, Diddy's posture had collapsed into itself, a billboard of contrition bordering on defeat. He stepped down, stumbled slightly, and reclaimed his seat without glancing at the defense table. The judge announced a 10-minute recess, but no one moved, spectators glued by the spectacle of a titan shrinking to human scale. Outside, reporters sprinted for cell service pockets, broadcasting the unimaginable. Sean Combs had supplied the prosecution's closing argument with his own voice, leaving the question not of guilt, but of how swiftly the fallout would crater everything tethered to his once untouchable brand. 10 minutes proved barely enough for hushed chaos. Defense lawyers vanished into chambers with prosecutors and re-emerged looking as if they'd aged a fiscal quarter. The judge straightened his robes, eyes sweeping the room like radar, then dropped the headline himself. The defendant seeks to change his plea. Gasps ricocheted off marble. One reporter nearly toppled a laptop, scrambling for the live blog update. Diddy rose, voice subdued but clear, and answered each ritual question. Yes, he understood the maximum sentence. No, no one threatened him. Yes, the decision was his alone, while the jurors watched a man unspool the last thread of denial in real time. His mother, seated behind the bar, pressed a hand to her mouth but kept her spine unbowed. When the judge finally intoned "guilty plea accepted," it felt less like a verdict and more like the moment a long-stalled record finally clicks to the next groove. Reporters sprinted for courthouse Wi-Fi, tweets firing like confetti cannons, label execs texted crisis comms at triple speed, playlists across the country quietly updated. Diddy, cuffs gleaming under fluorescence, cast one lingering glance at Janice, the only audience left that mattered, then followed deputies through the side door, a billion-dollar myth dissolved in that corridor, replaced by the drumbeat of consequences that no remix could fade. The guilty plea detonated across pop culture like a glitch in the Matrix. Suddenly, every glossy memory tied to Diddy flickered, then rebooted in harsher light. Within an hour, labels that once bragged about extracting the Combs touch issued somber pressers promising zero-tolerance reviews. Brand partners yanked ad campaigns as if extinguishing lit wicks. Music videos that had spun on infinite loop vanished from rotation, and TikTok creators swapped nostalgic dance challenges for exposés dissecting lyrics, now sounding like confessions. Archivists dredged up 1990s backstage clips, assistants flinching, artists whispering, threads that had been hiding in plain sight, but never magnetized attention until Janice cracked the facade. By nightfall, youths we knew shot to trending #1 as former interns, club promoters, even stylists posted receipts, unread emails flagging misconduct, settlement NDAs dated back to Nokia phone days, studio memos directing staff to lose certain security tapes. Each revelation emboldened the next, a domino rally of voices long muted by fear of industry exile. Fans, once quick to separate art from artist, staged digital bonfires, vinyl collections boxed for thrift stores, playlists scrubbed like browser histories after bad decisions, comment sections filled with collective mea culpas. How did we dance through decades of rumours? Overnight, the Combs saga morphed from singular fall from grace into a full-scale reckoning now creeping toward every corner of an entertainment machine built on looking away. 6 weeks later, the courtroom filled like a pressure cooker moments before the whistle, survivors clutching prepared statements, industry titans trying to slide in unnoticed, and Janice Comolmes sitting bolt upright in the front row, grief and resolve stitched into the same expression. One by one, women strode to the podium and translated years of insomnia into words sharp enough to slice silence, careers derailed, therapy bills stacked, trust turned to rubble. Diddy listened, shackled at the wrists, but not the ankles. Judicial courtesy, though no one mistook it for lenience, eyes glimmering with a mix of shame and something that looked almost like relief. When granted his turn, he rose slowly, voice hoarse yet unbroken, and addressed each victim by name, not title, acknowledging leverage, intimidation, the way money turned apologies into transactions. "I built a kingdom on fear," he said, "and today it burns down with me inside." Murmurs rippled. Janice's shoulders quivered but held. The judge recited a sentence heavy enough to echo through label boardrooms for decades. As marshals guided him out, Diddy paused at the aisle's edge. Mother and son locked eyes, neither blinking, a silent handshake between accountability and unconditional love. The doors closed, and with that click, an era's soundtrack finally spun to its last, unforgiving beat.